where I get crickets.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Amanda Woomer, and I am a local author, paranormal historian, paranormal researcher, sometimes investigator when the mood suits me. And this is my first sequel presentation I've ever done. So just out of curiosity, who was at my talk last summer? Wow, a lot of you. Well, welcome back. So for those of you that were here last summer, I have good news for you. Not a single one of these stories is a repeat at all. Someone asked me, like, well, are you going to tell this story? I was like, no, I told that last year. So there are 5 brand new locations, so you won't hear me repeating myself. For those of you that were not here last time, where were you? No. Welcome. So a little bit of background about me and who the heck I am. So like I said, my name's Amanda, and I run the website Spook Eats. It's me trying to be punny and sounding like spooky, but with food, we try. Basically, my paranormal origin story goes back to 1997 when I was 7 years old, so a very long time ago, before some of you were born, as I look around the room. It's gross. And I had my first paranormal encounter as a little girl. I think a lot of people who are interested in ghost stories and the paranormal have similar encounters at a young age, and then you just can't get over it, you can't forget it, you kind of wonder what the heck was that, you start kind of going down a rabbit hole and there's no going back. So that's my story, and I think that's a lot of people's stories out there as well. Fast forward to the mid-2000s, I was a hardcore Ghost Hunters fangirl. I was gonna marry Steve. Seriously, that was my plan. I'm happily married now, but when I met him a couple years ago, I definitely fangirled a little bit. 14-year-old Amanda was very happy. Was interested in this topic. I would go on ghost hunts and ghost tours, but it was all very innocent curiosity, kind of more of the thrill of the hunt of sorts than actually researching anything. Then in 2015, my little brother, Jed, he passed away after a battle with pediatric cancer. And that for me was kind of the kick in the behind that I needed to start taking this a bit more seriously. I wasn't just exploring old abandoned buildings, talking to the mid-air, hoping for a response. I really wanted to start figuring out what the heck is going on, what comes next. A lot of people are blessed with really strong faith in what happens after we die. I am not one of those people. So I was kind of like, I got to search for something, and my coping mechanism in my grief was ghost hunting. Go figure, I don't know. So I started trying to look into haunted locations that I could investigate to try to figure out what comes next, what happens to us after we die. And I found that a lot of haunted locations are really difficult for your average, everyday person to access. So a lot of times the places that we see on TV, the asylums, the hospitals, the orphanages, the jails, they're either completely closed to the public, you have to be on a TV show to access it, or sometimes they cost hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars to access just for an overnight, for a few hours. And I'm not famous, nor am I wealthy. So I found that these locations were inaccessible to me. I could not gain access to any of them. So I turned to haunted hospitality, haunted restaurants, haunted bars, haunted hotels, because these places are already open to the general public. They want you to come and visit them. But unlike the doom and gloom places you see on TV that might have a heavier energy or a darker environment, a lot of these places are very joyful. They're happy. They're places where people went to have a good time. So not only is the energy more enjoyable, but they have heat and electricity and plumbing. That's huge. Bathrooms, yay! Plus, they have food and drink. So for the price of a pint of beer or an appetizer, or if you're feeling daring, a room at a hotel, you could potentially have a paranormal encounter that you could also have in an abandoned jail or an abandoned orphanage. But it's a bit more of an enjoyable experience, at least in my opinion. So that was my start with Spook Eats, was really focusing on that haunted hospitality and bringing the paranormal to your average everyday person. Not everyone has a team that they can go investigating with. Not everyone has tons of money that they can invest for 8 hours in an abandoned building. So the haunted hotels, the haunted breweries, the haunted cafes, that was what I really started focusing on, because I knew I'm not the only person that's ever lost someone, and I'm not the only person that's ever questioned what comes next. I think it's something that the majority of people at least ponder every so often. So my hope with Spook Eats and with the Haunted Atlas that I have here tonight, and with this presentation even, is to kind of make the paranormal open to everyone and available to everyone, because that's something that I really feel very strongly about, is that the paranormal belongs to everyone, or technically no one. It doesn't belong to anyone, if we want to get existential about it. But it belongs to everyone, so everyone should be able to have access to it. And my hope is, either through this presentation, or if you choose to take home a book or two with you, that you can use these stories to kind of come to your own conclusions about what could potentially be waiting for us on the other side of that last breath. Because it's a very personal journey, it's very personal questions we all have. I can't tell you what I think because that works for me. It might not work for you. So my hope is that, you know, people, especially with the Haunted Atlas, you take the book, you break the binding, you take notes in it, and really kind of seek out those answers for yourself. So that's my hope tonight, with these stories that I'm sharing with you, and with the books that I have available here tonight, just to make the paranormal more accessible to everyone, because everyone should have access to it. All right, I'm going to step off my soapbox now. Mom, turn off your phone! Just kidding. Totally kidding. Kidding, I'm kidding. I'm talking to the camera. If you were here last year, we talked about witches, curses, and ghosts. This time around, I did a little bit different because I didn't have any more witches to talk about or any more curses to talk about. So instead, we're doing legends, lore, and ghosts. And we're really going to really look at how storytelling sometimes creates hauntings that might be there, might not be there, might be a mixture of the two. Before we get into the specific areas in Cattaraugus County, just really quickly, a brief, very brief, history of Cattaraugus County. It was originally the home to a now extinct indigenous tribe. I'm not going to try to pronounce the name because it would just be extraordinarily offensive. So it's a now extinct indigenous tribe, and the name Cattaraugus is actually very unfortunate. It translates to bad smelling banks. Yeah, yay! Of all the things to be named after. However, it's one of the most beautiful counties in Western New York. I would argue it's the most beautiful one. You know, you have Zoar Valley, you have Allegheny State Park, you have Holiday Valley, lots and lots of natural beauty. That's really, really some of the best in the state, if not the country, if I'll go there and say it. At one point in its history, Cattaraugus County was claimed by New York, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts as part of their areas of jurisdiction. In 1808, it finally became part of New York State officially, and it's been so ever since. So, like I said, very brief history of Cattaraugus County. The majority of the locations I'm going to talk about are open to the public. If they're not, I will note that because trespassing is bad. Don't do it. That's my disclaimer. So up first is partially open to the public, and it's St. Bonaventure University. This is kind of an unexpected haunted location. It's not a hospital, it's not a cemetery, it's not one of those typical places that you might think is haunted. But if you think about it, it's a school, but it's also kind of the center of spiritual study. So it kind of makes sense that spiritual happenings might be going on at St. Bonaventure. I always argue that things like miracles are paranormal, and I'll continue to argue that. But I would say that this is easily one of, if not the most haunted university or college in New York State. The stories that come out of it are pretty intense, and makes me very glad that I didn't go to school there because it just sounds really creepy. It was founded in 1858 as a way to kind of promote Catholic and Franciscan education in the area. And today it is extremely popular. I think it's grown to about 2,000 students now. And there's obviously more classes to learn now than just what they taught at seminaries and religious studies. So it's a very open school. I know several people that have gone there over the years. And it has at least 3 haunted buildings that we know of. So the first is Francis Hall. This was originally the seminary. It was called Christ the King Seminary, and today people report seeing the ghosts of monks there that formerly lived at the seminary. I always feel like ghost monks are like the pinnacle of a haunting, but at St. Bonaventure it's really just the beginning, which is terrifying. The second haunted building on campus is De La Roche Hall, and this is home to the computer science and the science classrooms, and according to legend, there was a student working furiously on finishing a final paper. A fire broke out, and he unfortunately and tragically lost his life and couldn't escape the building under the fire. Today, the stories surrounding this spirit claim that he is still trying to finish that paper, which just really stinks. If that's your eternity and you're working on a research paper, my condolences, it stinks. Supposedly the 3rd floor is the most haunted, and that's where he supposedly was working on his paper, and that is where he is said to haunt today. Not too scary, but Devereux Hall makes up for it, so that's included in the image here. So Devereux Hall, also known as the Dev, has a lot of wild stories surrounding it. The main story is that it was supposedly the site of a black mass in the 1960s. Now, black masses date back to the 4th century, so it wasn't necessarily part of like the Satanic Panic or anything new at that time. But black masses are basically a perversion of a Catholic mass. And the story goes that a group of students went to the top floor of the Dev, started this ritual in the hopes of summoning something. Why? I don't know, but that's what they wanted to do. Luckily, a professor or a staff member came and interrupted the ritual before they could finish it. But people believe that something did come through this black mass, something did come through this ritual, and it's something that's negative, it's dark, it's heavy. I won't say it's demonic because that's a word that drives me insane. I don't like it. But it's definitely something dark, something heavy. Today, the upper floor, the very top floor, is under lock and key. You can't access it. However, students who live here, this is a residence hall, by the way, yay! People choose to live here. People claim to hear footsteps, thumping, strange noises, the sound of explosions coming from that upper floor. And it's unexplained, it's under lock and key constantly, so there's really no explanation behind why that is happening, aside from the story of the black mass that supposedly happened there. Another spirit that is said to be haunting the Dev, it's a very crowded building apparently in the celestial plane, is the ghost of a man named Willie Cooper. He was a World War II veteran, and we actually have physical evidence that he actually existed. There used to be a war monument just outside the building, and the name Willie Cooper was inscribed on that monument. It's now moved to a different place on campus, but the name is there, which is kind of cool that we have actual physical evidence. But Willie would be seen kind of pacing the hallway just beyond where that monument was. So he might be searching for that monument now that it's moved. We don't really know why he lingers at the Dev. Another ghost said to be haunting the Dev, again it's very crowded in there, is a friar that is said to be jogging the halls at night. I assume that he was there during the time of the seminary, and he's kind of connected with the ghost monks that we saw in Francis Hall. But the last story surrounding Devereux Hall is that it was supposedly the site of a grisly murder in the 1930s. So lots of stories surrounding this one particular building, and a lot of really heavy heavy subjects, a murder, a black mass, even a World War II veteran. There's a lot of energy in this building. And despite the fact that it is really, 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 really haunted, it's the most popular residence hall on campus, despite the fact that it's the oldest one, built in 1926. So apparently it's been updated, I assume, but the ghosts still hang out. So that is St. Bonaventure. So if anyone's planning on going to St. Bonaventure for school, have fun. Up next, we have East Otto Cemetery. I'm a cemetery nerd. My car is the orange car, and I have a bumper sticker that says I brake for cemeteries, so I had to squeeze one in. So East Otto Cemetery is the final resting place for a lot of the early settlers of East Otto. The town itself was established in 1854, and even though there aren't any famous people buried there, there aren't any huge monuments to kind of guide your way, it is said to be extremely haunted, and it's one of the noisier cemeteries in Western New York, and that's because neighbors in the area claim to hear the sound of two women screaming in the middle of the night. This sound has been traced to two headless women. How headless women are screaming, I don't know. We're just gonna roll with it though. But these two women have been spotted at night in the cemetery, running around the grounds, screaming in a panic. People believe that the third entity that is seen at East Otto Cemetery, a man wielding an axe, is who they are running from, and possibly why they're headless. I don't know. There's a lot of folklore surrounding this cemetery. The sound of people screaming, people crying, the idea of if you're sitting near the edge, you could get pulled out of it. So a lot of strange stories that you don't usually hear from cemeteries. Usually it's, oh, I saw a ball of light. Oh, I heard a whisper in my ear. Oh, there's a chill down my spine. But this is a bit more jarring, with headless women screaming bloody murder as they run away from an ex-murderer, I assume. Not much history to actually back that up, but it makes for one heck of a good ghost story for a haunted cemetery. Kind of on a country road, not really much happening else on that stretch. East Otto Cemetery is open to the public. So I should mention St. Bonaventure is kind of open to the public, but most of the places where the hauntings happen are residence halls, so really can't get access. East Otto Cemetery is completely open to the public. It's open from dawn until dusk. And I just ask, if you do go to visit, be respectful of not just the neighbors, but also those buried there. It is a cemetery, it's hallowed ground, and I believe it is still somewhat active. People are still being buried in there. So just be respectful, that's all. But you can go check it out. Highly recommend it. It has some really interesting graves. There's one in particular for a little boy that you can tell it's hand carved. They're all hand carved, but it's really hand carved with a dog on it. So a lot of really cool tombstones. Nothing big and impressive like at Forest Lawn in downtown Buffalo, but definitely a very special place. Up next is one that I hear, oh. So we've got the Hindsdale House. I think this is the one that everyone knows about. Even if you're not really into the paranormal, I feel like you've at least heard of it, hopefully. It's a hot topic on ghost hunting shows. The Hindsdale House, I would argue, after the Amityville Horror House, is probably one of the most infamous haunted houses. It's got a lot of stories surrounding it, a lot of folklore surrounding it. And just like Amityville, Hindsdale has a lot of stories surrounding it. Not everything is necessarily completely accurate. You know, a lot of the stories say it's buried on a Native American burial mound. There was a massacre that killed hundreds of people. There were brothers who were serial killers on the property. There's no history to back any of that up, but it makes for a heck of a good ghost story. That scared me for a second. I was like, oh gosh, they're coming to get me. While those stories are really more so just stories to kind of amp up the creep factor of this building, there is paranormal activity happening here. I had the pleasure of investigating it this year during a blizzard. If you can't tell from the picture, that's all whited out. We almost got snowed in. It was great. It was great. At least they have have keys. That I was grateful for. But the Hindsdale House was built in 1853, and there was no paranormal activity reported until the 1970s. So again, if we're looking at, well, what causes a haunting? You know, well, sometimes it could be the land, sometimes it could be an event that happens, sometimes it could be a person. And I think in the sense of the Hindsdale House, that is what happened, at least my personal opinion. You know, it was not built on a Native American burial mound. We know where they are, the Seneca know where they are, and it's not here. So I don't think it was the land. There wasn't a massacre that killed hundreds of people. That would be an event that would cause this. But paranormal activity seems to happen overnight when the Dandy family moved in. So I do think that it has something to do with the Dandy family. So the Dandy family moved in the 1970s, and almost instantly, weird, freaky things started happening. Family members were scratched. Books would fly off the bookshelves. Knives would be embedded in family photos, which is slightly terrifying. This is horror movie fodder right now. They would hear chanting in the woods surrounding the house. And if you've ever been to the Hindsdale House, you go outside at night, you're surrounded by the woods, it's freaky. So if you hear chanting, get out. I don't know. They also reported seeing strange creatures. They described it as demonic entities. They could have been inhuman things, cryptids. We don't exactly know what it was that they saw, but a lot of really weird, unexplained things were happening to this family in a very short amount of time. So eventually, Father Alphonsus, who worked at St. Bonaventure, yeah, we're all connected, it's great, worked at St. Bonaventure, he was brought into the house to kind of figure out what the heck is going on. And the story likes to say that he performed an exorcism on the house, because exorcism is a buzzword right now. We like that word. We like the word demon. We like the word exorcism. However, it wasn't quite an exorcism. Father Alphonsus said himself, one cannot exorcise a building, only a person. So what he did was that he conducted a ritual to de-psych or de-psyche the house, which is basically an exorcism for a building. This procedure didn't quite go as planned, it didn't work, and it just stirred up even more energy. Things got so bad, the Dandy family ended up leaving. They had to get out. And it sat vacant for a very, very long time until, I believe, 2015, when Dan Place bought it and kind of started restoring it. It's now a paranormal research center, which I love that that's the term that we are using. It's more than just a place to go ghost hunting. It really is established to spend the night. There's a kitchen, there's a bathroom, there's a shower. So I know people that have spent weeks there really investigating. They're writing books on it and really trying to figure out what is going on at the Hindsdale House. So again, this is completely open to the public. They do public events, they do private events. Like I said, I just did a private back in the winter, snowing, it was great. For fear of my life, I thought I would spend the rest of my days there in our lovely Western New York winters. But highly recommend it. Even just to go to experience one of the hottest places right now. People are always talking about the Hindsdale House. I had some experiences there, not nearly as much as chanting in the forest and demonic creatures lurking around, which for that, I'm okay with that. So the Hindsdale House, highly recommend it. Open to the public. Up next we have Wildwood Sanitarium. This is another one that has a special place in my heart. I've been here a couple times and it's just a really cool building. I joke saying that if you ordered the Winchester Mystery House on Wish, you got Wildwood Sanitarium. It's hiding behind doors. You can access a floor going up this flight of stairs, but you have to go down a different flight of stairs, and you can and will get lost. It's great. Highly recommend. 5 stars. So Wildwood Sanitarium was one of the very first holistic hospitals that New York State had. It opened in 1909, and at the time it was absolutely groundbreaking. They had a bathhouse down in the basement, hence the picture of me in a bathtub, where people could come. They could get cold baths, they could get hot baths, they could get electric baths, which I don't recommend. I don't know what that is, but it doesn't sound safe. But there you have it. And the people that would come to Wildwood, they would struggle with alcoholism, drug addiction, Basically, the only rule for patients was that you could not be contagious. Whatever ailment you had, we can cure it as long as you're not contagious. Unfortunately, all of that changed in 1923 when they were required to start taking in tuberculosis patients. And we all know tuberculosis is a little bit contagious, so that kind of shut down the holistic end of things, and it became a tuberculosis ward for several years. Eventually it became apartments. It was cut up very strange, hence this weird staircases and the dead ends. Today it is similar to Hindsdale, where you can rent it out. There's a bathroom with a shower, there's tons of beds, there's a kitchen with coffee, yay! And you can investigate it, you can really start exploring it. So some of the stories surrounding Wildwood claim that someone hanged themselves on the upper floor. The spirit of a little boy named Tommy is said to run around the house. There is actually a Tommy's room that's filled with horrifying dolls and marionettes and ventriloquist dummies. It's awful. And then there's also a man named Charlie who is said to lurk up in the attic. People see shadow figures, they'll feel someone playing with their hair. If you're down on one level, you hear someone walking above you even though there's no one else in the house. So really, really active, and this is very new to the paranormal scene. We've only just really started being able to get in there and investigate. So again, it is open to the public. They do public events, they do private events. So it's really easy. They even do, they're doing a Paracon in the fall. So really a great new haunted location that you can check out that has an interesting history, documented history, which I always like, being the history nerd. So highly, highly recommend. It's one of my favorite places. Last but not least, I'm checking my time here, okay, is the J.N. Adam Memorial Hospital. Right off the bat, I'm going to say this is not open to the public. Don't recommend trespassing. It's bad, don't do it, please. Please. But this is a location that, I was going to say it haunts me, but I'm not going to because that's too punny. It just has stuck with me since visiting it for the Haunted Atlas. As you can tell from the image, it was a very foggy day, and I just remember driving down this country road, no idea where I'm going. All I know is that it's somewhere on this road, and this building just emerged from the fog like a monolith. It was so overwhelming and so powerful to see. I felt the need to share it with you guys, even though it's not open to the public. It kills me. So the story of the J.N. Adam Hospital is very similar to a lot of historic buildings in Western New York, unfortunately. It was built over 100 years ago, and since then it has fallen into a state of just complete disrepair and abandonment. It was named after the Buffalo Mare at the time when it was built in 1912, and it was built specifically to be a sanitarium for tuberculosis patients. So if you were diagnosed with tuberculosis, you would be sent away from everyone who is still healthy, out of sight, out of mind, basically to spend your final days away from you. This hospital was interesting because they touted some of the most groundbreaking procedures, the best medicine out there, and the main thing that they shared was the sun cure. What the sun cure was, basically people would sit out in the winter, play in the snow, basically naked, probably hopefully in their underpants, and they would be getting fresh air and sunshine. That's what cures tuberculosis. And doctors from all over the world would come to the J.N. Adam Hospital to watch these patients and watch these procedures and learn from the doctors at this time. Obviously, as time went on, sun cure didn't really prove to be scientifically beneficial. Eventually, things like antibiotics started to come into our general knowledge, and that kind of faded away. Over the time, this turned into a hospital for those with developmental disabilities. It closed in 1993 for good, and since then it has been completely abandoned. However, tons of stories surround this building. It is on the New York State Registry of Historic Places, but that still hasn't saved it somehow. My favorite story that comes from this is that the dining hall rotunda with the stained glass roof is supposedly part of the Temple of Music from the Pan American Exposition. And that is supposedly where Leon Solgus assassinated President McKinley. Side note, great uncle Leon Solgus assassinated President McKinley. So that's my weird Buffalo connection. Yay! Huzzah! So that is like a fun story that people like to say that, oh, the rotunda is from the Temple of Music. The Parks and Recreation Department would like to disagree. There is no historic evidence of this, but it makes, again, for one heck of a good ghost story. It just adds to the creep factor of this location. However, there have been people that have made their way inside of illegal means, and they've explored the grounds over the years. Urban explorers, paranormal investigators, again, I do not recommend this, just going on the record. And people who have gone in have reported strange anomalies, unexplained phenomena on the grounds. So there's this sensation of someone watching you from down the hallway. People report hearing footsteps in the building that just echoes because it's so empty. People hear whispers in the rooms. They also hear screams on the ground. People have reported seeing full body apparitions of people just wandering the grounds. This is a huge complex. The photo I have here is just one section of the hospital that I was able to like stick my hand through the fence and take a picture of. And one of the prevailing stories is that of the apparition of nurses who committed suicide while working there. They're still seen on the grounds as well. Whether there's historic evidence of that, we don't really know. All we really have to go off of are people's reports coming out of their exploration of this abandoned building. So like I said, this one unfortunately is not open to the public. I don't know if it ever will be. From what I've read, it's going to cost millions of dollars to restore it and just as much to demolish it. So it just kind of sits there deteriorating as the years go by. It's been there for almost 30 years now, just sitting there. So it's very sad. So those were just 5 haunted locations that are here in Cattaraugus County. This is my cheap plug now. I'm gonna like hop on my cheap plug soapbox. So if you want to know more about haunted locations in Cattaraugus County, as well as the rest of Western New York, I have a book here tonight called A Haunted Atlas of Western New York. And it was my very first book I ever wrote. It has over 130 haunted locations. Obviously, hotels, restaurants, bars are in here because that's my specialty and I like to eat and drink. But there's also, there's also haunted roads, haunted cemeteries, museums, old houses, lighthouses. A lot of really cool locations in here. We have addresses and coordinates so you can actually find these locations. There is walking tours and driving tours. Everyone's favorite part is the spooky bucket list, which was my husband's idea, not mine. I'm still bitter about it. But it's a really fun book. So if you're interested in learning more about not just Cattaraugus County's history, but all of Western New York's haunted local history, I highly recommend it. Other books that I have here tonight, my newest book is called Harlots and Hauntings. It's a little seedy, if you can't tell from the title. So this is about the history of prostitution, and it focuses on 11 femme phantoms of negotiable affections that haunt haunted hotels, restaurants, bars. So this is another travel guide if you're interested in that. The third travel guide I have is America's Haunted Breweries, Distilleries, and Wineries. And this focuses on haunted breweries, distilleries, and wineries. There are some local places here in Western New York that are featured in here as well. Another haunted location here in Western New York is the Ghostlight Theater. It's my favorite haunted location, and this book in particular is a fundraising book, so 100% of the proceeds go right back to the theater. It's 133 years old this year, so she needs a lot of help. Don't tell her I said that. Then I have a Victorian Christmas book. This is 12 Victorian ghost stories, because that's what the Victorians did at Christmas time, as well as 6 Victorian recipes, updated for the 21st century, because nobody wants to eat calf's head anymore. Most likely, as I scan the audience to see. You're like, yeah, maybe. So a lot of fun. I have a hard time with the holidays since losing my brother, and I know a lot of people don't love the holly jolly feel of Christmas, so this is a good excuse to get dark and gloomy. What? My mom shakes her head. The last 3 books I have are my babies. This is The Feminine Macabre. This is my all-female paranormal journal. I started it last year. I believe when I was here last, I only had 1 volume out. So we now have 3 volumes. Volume 1 has a foreword by Patty Negri from Ghost Adventures. Volume 2 has a foreword by Michelle Bellinger, who's featured on Portals to Hell. And then Volume 3 has a foreword by Bridget Marquardt from The Girls Next Door. Playboy Bunny, yes. She's really interested in the paranormal. She's a parapsychologist. And these are filled with writings from women from all over the world on subjects like hauntings, folklore, tarot, witchcraft, death customs, all that fun stuff. So that is my cheap plug. I'm not going to say any more on the subject. They're all available tonight. 1 book is $15, 2 are $25, 3 is $35. But before I talk your ears off too long, last but not least, if you're interested in either haunted hospitality or women in the paranormal, or you just want to follow along on my weird little adventures, I am online. My website is spookeats.com. And then I'm at Spookeats on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, kind of TikTok, but not really. I'm too old for TikTok, but I try. I'm part of the geriatric unit on TikTok. It's rough. It's rough on there. But with that being said, I would love to open the floor for anyone who has any questions at all.
No.
This is when I feel like a teacher.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, the father that did the exorcism, he did work at Bona's, and he had there were 2 courses on ghosts lore.
Yeah.
Which were really cool because those were my 2 favorite classes.
Oh, you actually had him as a teacher? That's so cool. We got a connection.
Yeah,
I love it.
Really, he would leave the front row open, and if the door would open, he would say, "Please come on in and sit down." It was
wow.
He was really. I wish I was a little older now and remembered a lot of stuff.
Yeah, of course. At the time, you're in college. You don't want to be there.
I was just taking the class, and now I think back, it's like, oh, I wish.
That's so cool. Yeah, when I was designing this program, I was like, well, I have to do Hindsdale. I have to do St. Bonaventure. Yeah. They go hand in hand beautifully. So I was glad that people recognized that.
Yeah, and I never knew that about
really?
Home.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting.
Yeah. So. Anything else? Yes.
Have you ever lectured at Lilydale?
I have not lectured at Lilydale. I wish. I love Lilydale. It's one of my favorite places to just like go and just relax and unwind. I don't think I'm cool enough to talk at Lilydale, if I'm being completely honest. But maybe someday. Hopefully. Maybe. I feel like a teacher now.
Yeah.
Did you know that stone over there is one from the prehistoric Indians that were here and died?
I did not, but I see that now.
Yep. There's like 3 or 4 of them in the colony stones.
That's really cool. Did not know that.
And they're the ones that made the snakes in Ohio?
Yes.
Yes.
Very cool. Did not know that. That needs a bigger sign.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you see a difference between hauntings and spiritual existences?
Oh gosh. So I always have this debate with people, like what's a ghost, what's a spirit, what's a haunting, what's residual, what's intelligent. And I think it has so much to do with a lot of different things. It has to do with the location itself, the land that you're on, but then also the people that are currently there, whether it's a family living in a house or just a group of people coming in for an investigation. I think that the energy that people bring in with them is huge. And I think a lot of times there are several locations in the country that I've talked to several other investigators at paracons and conventions and conferences that a lot of us feel like it's not haunted by a ghost or a spirit, but it's more like a thought form that people bring in with them. You go into a location expecting something to happen, or you think a certain thing occurred there. That manifests itself gradually over time. If you get enough people coming in thinking a certain thing happened or something happened a certain way, that can kind of manifest itself, and it can affect how you interpret activity, how you interpret results. So it's really important to keep in mind who you're with and where you are, and to keep a level head, but also kind of filter out facts from fiction, feelings from actual things occurring, and that's really hard to do. I struggle with doing that a lot of the time. If I'm at a location that's said to be really dark, anything I hear, I'm going to freak out and be like, oh gosh, it's something evil coming for me, when in reality, it's probably not. So I think it has a lot to do with the people that you're with, whether it's a haunting or just a thought form manifesting itself. And you have to take it one place at a time, and even one day at a time, because the people that you're with could really be affecting the energy of the location or the results that you're getting. So it's really important to be careful and choose your people wisely. It sounds terrible, but it's true.
Did you read Echoes of a Haunting?
I am about halfway through it. When I was at Hindsdale, I saw it in the case, so I bought my copy of it. So I'm about halfway through it now. So stay tuned for my
Her
my
personality
review.
changes as the book goes on.
Yeah. It's really great. Echoes of a Haunting, for those of you who don't know, was written by Clara Dandy, who lived in the Hindsdale House when everything was happening, and it's basically her journal of everything as it goes down. So it's really good. I really recommend it as a primary source of what happened. Yes?
Our son, we're from Hindsdale. Our son went to school with one of the Dandy boys.
Mm-hmm.
He came to school one day and he was telling about all the haunting things that happened in the house. And he invited anybody that wanted to come up to the house and stay overnight to see if they could see some of the hauntings that went on. So my son came home and was so excited about it and teased to go. He wanted to go really bad, so we let it go. And the Dandy boy told him that around midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning, this beautiful lady would come out of the pond and in the fog and so forth. And they stayed up all night. He never saw a thing, he never heard a thing, nothing ever went on in the house.
Yeah. Figures. You can't. It never happens when you want it to. So, and that's another thing I forgot to mention about Hindsdale, is that a woman in white was said to be spotted there. And it's funny you say that, because when I was at Hindsdale, it was very, very quiet. I think from what I've heard from friends who are investigators that have gone there multiple times, it's very hit or miss. Either it is complete chaos and you can't keep track of what's happening, or it's just crickets. And for us, that's kind of what it was. We found evidence of animals in the house. So anytime we heard scratching or rummaging, we were like, well, it's probably a squirrel, it's probably a mouse. So that kind of ruined any of the creep factor for us. But that's so interesting that your son actually got to go there. Didn't see anything though, but that's okay. That's okay. Did he think it was haunted, or did he just think? Did your son think that it was haunted after that still, or was he kind of?
Well, he didn't know.
Yeah.
He just was a little bit curious about
Yeah.
it more than anything.
Very cool.
And soon after that, the Dandys left. So
Yeah.
he didn't get a chance to go back again. But talking about St. Bonaventure, I worked there for 25 years in the Houston Library. My daughter-in-law, when she went to school there, stayed in Deverell Hall, basically because she had heard about the ghosts and so forth, and she was very into that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But all the while she was there for the 4 years,
Nothing.
never saw or heard anything.
How it always happens. It's like you pay money to go someplace, you want something to happen, it doesn't happen, and when you're least expecting it, something happens. Honestly, like, I've been doing this off and on since 2004, really, really hardcore since 2015, and since that time, I can count on one hand the number of times something paranormal has happened. I saw something, I photographed something. It's really only happened, I want to say, 3 or 4 times. So unfortunately, it's not as common as like the TV shows would have you believe. I host public events at the Ghostlight Theater, and I always start the conversation with people by saying, like, you know ghost adventures, you know ghost hunters, and everyone's like, yeah. I said, yeah, this is going to be nothing like that. Paranormal investigating is actually really, really boring. You sit in a room in the dark, sometimes by yourself, and you're asking questions to nothing, and you look crazy. So again, I don't think it's as frequent as people believe. So when you go to a haunted location and nothing happens, you think, well, this place isn't haunted. Or you're really disappointed and you're discouraged. So I want to encourage people, if you're thinking of starting, investigating the paranormal or going on ghost hunts or going on ghost tours, to keep an open mind. That's always what you hear. But it's okay to be disappointed, but don't be discouraged. And keep going, keep trying. Again, I do this on a fairly regular basis, and only a handful of times have I actually experienced something where I was like, that was amazing, I have to keep going. 9 times out of 10, it's a dud. So, unfortunately, no. Anything else? Any other questions? Yes?
Years and years ago, like in the 70s, I worked at the Bonaventure Psych Center, but I had to go over to J.N. Adams for some classes. I was taking a psychology course there. And I am not the type of person who often sees things, but I get like these feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Like I pick up on emotions,
Yeah.
like I get intensely sad or whatever.
Yeah.
And the weird thing about both of those places back then, when they were inhabited, it was hard to tell when you would hear crying and moaning if it was the people there
Mhm.
or something else.
Yeah.
Because you could just feel that there were other
Yeah.
unseen beings
Yeah.
there. You could feel it. You knew they were there.
Yeah.
But it was, okay, is this a real person crying, or is this,
Yeah.
But both places very spooky.
Yeah. Very heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially the psych center, the buildings were connected by tunnels.
Oh.
And if you had to go from one building to another in the middle of a blizzard, you take the tunnels.
Yep.
And you heard all kinds of stuff. And sometimes you'd go around a corner and there would be a patient standing there,
wow.
Which was scary, but at least you knew it was a person.
Yeah.
You know.
That's true.
And at J.N. Adams, those big porches,
Mhm.
that's where all their beds were.
Oh, really?
Not during the developmental, not when I was
No.
there. During the 20s, during the tuberculosis, it
To
was
get their
all,
fresh air.
They slept, even at night in the
Yeah.
winter. They slept on those porches.
Yeah. It's nice to know that we've advanced a little bit more than that
Yeah.
over the years. Anything?
Do you know why St. Bonaventure is haunted?
Why?
Because Mr. Nicholas
Yeah.
was real good friends with the Pope and left all his money, the Pope and the school, and the family got nothing, and they cursed him. That's the family lore.
Really? I like that. I have to add that. I like that. And I don't blame them.
I mean, he went to the Pope like once a year to see him.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. If I was the family, I'd be a little ticked off.
Yeah, we became farmers.
Any other questions? Yes.
I heard that sometimes if you go to these haunted places and you're open enough, sometimes spirits can follow someone home. Is that true?
So the question was, if you go to these haunted locations and if you're open enough, can a spirit follow you home? This is a really contested topic in the paranormal, and I think everyone has their own opinion on the matter or their own beliefs on the matter. My personal belief is that if an entity or if a person has been in a location for decades, if not generations or hundreds of years, I would assume that they've become comfortable with it. That's kind of where they prefer to be. A lot of times I think that in life that was where they were their most happiest, that's where their happiest memories were. So why on earth would they want to follow me back to my nasty apartment if they could stay in a mansion or this beautiful building? So I'm personally of the mindset that I don't think, if things do follow you home, it's not as frequent as we imagine it is. However, that being said, anytime I leave a haunted location, just to be on the safe side and to dot my I's and cross my T's, I just say, hey, this was a great time. Thank you so much for spending time with me and talking with me, but you can't follow me home. Just to be on the safe side, because you never know. I don't know. So I personally feel like that the odds of it happening are very slim, but just in case, why not be on the safe side and just kind of watch your back a little bit. I always joke saying I love visiting haunted locations. I don't want to live in one. And that's always what my husband says. Please just don't bring anything home with you. So far, knock on wood, nothing has ever followed me home. So whether it's the idea that things don't follow you home, or if it's me just being careful saying, please don't follow me home, I don't know. It could be a mixture of the two. But that's just my personal belief, is that if it does happen, it's not as frequent as we might think. Yes?
Following along that, in your experience, how many encounters would you percentage-wise, would you say hostile, neutral, friendly?
So I mentioned earlier that I hate the word demon in the paranormal. I think it's very Christian-centric, where I don't think everything can be explained from a Christian point of view. So I don't like that terminology to begin with. So I do believe that there are non-human entities, things from ancient times that we can't even begin to wrap our minds around. You know, elementals, deities, things like that. I always joke saying, like, if I'm in a location and it's said to be haunted by a demon, I don't think it's a demon. I think it's the sort of thing where if you are a nice person in life, you're going to be a nice person in death. Same thing if you were a jerk in life, you're gonna be a jerk in death. So I think those nasty, malicious ghosts and kind of those troublemakers that people talk about that scratch you or pull your hair or push you, they were the jerks in life. They were the bullies. Luckily, at least for me personally, I've never been to a location where I have encountered anything super malicious. I've encountered things that don't like women. So there's like that intimidation factor where, you know, you feel something kind of like looming over you. I've had my fingers go through my hair in like a perverted sort of way. Did not like that at all. Hightailed it out of there real fast. But again, I would say the majority of encounters that I've had have been very positive or neutral. You know, not positive or negative, just kind of acknowledging, yeah, hey, how you doing? I'm just gonna keep doing my thing, you do your thing. So again, I think TV would have us believe that more of what we encounter is evil and out to get us and out to scare us, whereas, at least from my experience, that's not the case, luckily. Knock on wood. Hopefully that doesn't change.
Can I say something about that?
Sure.
I also think if something is creepy or scary, we take it that it's evil because we don't understand it, like the mirror thing that happened to you at Iron Island Museum. I don't know if you want, you know, it's, you know, something scary happened, and that doesn't mean it was evil if it just because it scared you.
Yeah.
I guess that's
a good way to look at it. Just because something scares you doesn't make it evil. That's just how you're interpreting how something's presenting itself. She mentioned a mirror at Iron Island. I'll share it really quick. People always ask me, what's the scariest place you've ever been to? And like I kind of mentioned before, I've never been to a place that really felt scary. I've never gone to a place where I would never go back because of the ghosts. Maybe the people, not the ghosts. And Iron Island had a really creepy thing happen to me. I was there completely alone working on a fundraiser for them. I was locked in the building, but it was the middle of the day. I had my, you know, fun music playing, so I was totally fine. And while I was working in the chapel room, if you're familiar with the area, across the hall there's a huge mirror, probably about like 4 or 5 feet across. It's very, very big. I hate mirrors with like the deepest passion out there. We only have one mirror in my house. My husband hates it. He would like to have one in our bedroom. I say absolutely not. That's terrifying. No. This mirror, I was ignoring it while I was working on my project because I had to get it done by a deadline. And in this mirror, I saw what looked like to me a shadowy figure that was like dripping out of the mirror, kind of like ink or tar. I very quickly gathered up all my things and I like left. I'd like to think I would be brave and try to document it, but I think in order to go there. So if you go to St. Bonaventure, you can do it. Alrighty. Do you have a question?
Alright, so I was gonna ask, like, you said you had this big paranormal effect happening when you were a kid and got scared. Is that like a vision or just
Yeah, so my very first encounter when I was a kid, that was the question. I was in my bedroom one night and out in the hallway I saw an old lady. My grandma wasn't staying with us. There was no old lady in the house, and she had crazy bedhead. She was wearing a bathrobe and slippers. and she was completely solid. It wasn't like she looked like a ghost and I could see through her. She was completely solid, and she was walking through the hallway. She stopped, turned and looked at me before continuing into our family's closet. It probably only lasted about a second or two before I called for my mom, and she actually ran through the old lady. I'm assuming you didn't see her. We haven't talked about it since then, but I'm assuming she didn't see her. And I got all the platitudes, oh, it was just your imagination, you were dreaming, blah, blah, blah. But I was fully awake. She was very physical. She was very much there. Strangely enough, that's the only time I ever saw her. I don't feel like I grew up in a haunted house. That was the only weird thing that ever really happened. So I think I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, looking in the right direction. And I happened to spot her. I found out years later that the previous owner of our house was an elderly woman. So I'm assuming she was just checking in on the house. We had been there for about 2 or 3 years at that point. And then she probably saw that there was a happy family there taking care of the house. My parents are still there. And she was just able to move on. That's my hope, at least. So, any other questions or comments at all? Yes.
Do you ever go to private homes, like the homesteads around here?
No, I don't do private investigation or private residence investigations. The majority of what I do is very history based. I like to go to historical places, share the history. I don't think I have enough experience or knowledge to go to a family to help them in their time of need. There are groups in Western New York that do that. I'm not one of them, and I won't pretend that I can do those things or that I should be doing those things. So I don't do private cases, but yeah,
Okay.
I wouldn't touch that. I'd be nervous too. Too much pressure. Anything else? To make sure I scan everyone. Awesome. You guys are really good at keeping me on schedule. Wow. Thank you so much for those of you that came. I have about another half hour or so if anyone wants to come up and privately talk to me. If anyone wants to grab any books, any copies, we take Cash Card and Venmo because we're hip now. We just added Venmo. But aside from that, thank you so much for coming. This was a beautiful night, beautiful way to start the spooky season, right? So thank you so much, and get home safe.
All right. Thank you.